Hello, everyone. In today's episode, we have Lauren Hamilton. She is the founder of Digital Narrative Small Business, a boutique for digital marketing services for small to medium businesses. Welcome, Lauren. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell the audience about yourself?
I think you did a great job. I've been in business for 10 years as digital narrative. I've always worked in the professional services of marketing and advertising. And until recently, everything's been done in despite being a digital marketer, in quite an offline, sort of artisan way, really, with each client being dealt with completely step by step by myself and a small team of 3. And recently we've developed a SaaS product to try and make that experience better for ourselves and better for our clients and more, more streamlined.
Exactly. Well, thank you. Our story goes a bit back a few months when you submitted an article about scaling your business. So we will leave the link to that article in the description of this interview. And at that point, you were still scaling your agency, and now we see a few months forward. Then you're actually building your SaaS product. And the most interesting thing is that you've actually done it without any kind of external support, say investors. So I'd like to know a bit more about your story, but also the learnings you've had, the challenges, and all these things.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the key things I've learned, and I'm sure your audience is mixed, but with women in business, it's extremely rare to actually succeed or even to apply for external investment. So I don't think it's actually as common as we might imagine. Only 2% of all investment funding into businesses went to female-owned businesses last year, 2%. 98% went to businesses which were helmed by men.
Yeah.
It is. And I think that really comes from 2 things. One is financial literacy. And I personally, until really this year, did not know the difference between an angel investor, a seed investor. I probably still couldn't give a satisfactory answer, but I've got some grip on it now. So if you don't grow up knowing that and that's not spoken to you or around you, maybe you didn't study those STEM, the science, technology, engineering and math subjects as much because you study the softer skills, you probably don't know a lot about that. So that's one of them. I think the other one is, again, to mention the imposter syndrome. So I work with a lot of female clients, and a lot of the time they just feel like they're not up to that level, or they're waiting for some kind of magical sign to prove that they're good enough to do something like that. For me, the reason I didn't choose to get investors early on, and it is something I'm considering probably next year, but I've been in business, as I said, for a decade, and I've been really lucky that the only investment I've had has been a loan, initially from my parents. So my parents loaned me $10,000, which is Australian dollars. So I think that's about 6,000 US. And that was enough just to sort of get me started. And then because I have a partner and my partner works full time, where I've had those months that do, when you're starting out the first couple of years, it waxes and wanes. 1 month you're drinking champagne, 1 month you're eating baked beans on toast for dinner. So having, a partner with a stable income allowed me to do that. Whereas if you've got 2 self-employed people, I think that's when it's a lot more difficult.
It's quite nice to see a few years later, then, you've been able to continue growing. You have a bigger team and you have more resources. So would you mind walking us through your growth journey in that sense and what the next step are? And just, I would like to also know a bit more about your SaaS product, because I'm really interested about that.
Absolutely. So my growth journey, and I think this is common, it does not look like a chart like this. So if you cannot see me, it does not look like a straight, sort of line that's ascending like a perfect ski slope. I don't know any business that has. It is higgledy-piggledy and it looks like a roller coaster. We grew at one time. I had 5 staff. We shrank for various reasons. I've had 2 babies in this time. I've had a number of health situations. So at times I have deliberately sort of retracted the business. And I think if you can't do that, what is the point of working for yourself if you don't have the opportunity to let your lifestyle dictate sometimes how much or how little you work, you might as well work for somebody else. So off my own bat as well with COVID, I've sort of, reduced the scale and the size of my business at times, but always with, I guess, an idea of where I wanted to get to eventually, and that, sort of lower months or lower periods were temporary blips. And, I think what really opened my eyes was I actually undertook business coaching last year. So again, for lots of small business owners, we think we have to do everything on our own and that we can't spend that money. It's a lot of money to get business coaching with books and podcasts, and we look at YouTube tutorials, but there's nothing like having somebody who gets to know your business quite well and gets to know you and can just actually speak quite plainly to you. So my business coach will say, Lauren, stop wasting your time. Stop sitting on your ass. You're undercharging. Why are you selling so many products? Why have you got so many customers? You need less customers, more, higher fee paying. So really, she could speak quite bluntly to me and in a way that most people wouldn't. Your friends wouldn't. Your partner wouldn't. That person can tell you those hard truths.
And it's very good and interesting to listen to those truths as well. And, you might think, well, this is quite an expensive investment, but it is an investment in yourself and in your business. So I think you can confirm the fact that after going through the coaching process, you have revamped your business. You have improved,
Absolutely.
right?
I've made dramatic changes. And interestingly, once again, these dramatic changes precipitated like a dip again, because I basically stopped working in my business because the changes I was making were huge. They were taking all of my time. I was doing the bare minimum of client-facing work, getting my staff to do all of that, so their hours increased. I went from having 1 to 2 copywriters, for instance. But what that meant was I was able to devote the time needed. So for several months, like it's been crazy. I've been working around the clock. My new product is called Website in 1 Week. And really it was inspired by my business coach, encouraging me to reduce the number of offerings I had, to specialize in what I was best at, and to go back to basic marketing, which is, what is the problem that you solve or your product solves for your target audience that's a real pain point for them, and how do you solve it better than anybody else? And by focusing on that and thinking about that, I realized that what I do better than anybody else is demystify digital marketing. I have no enjoyment or love of jargon. I don't believe in keeping things behind the magician's cape and sort of pretending that I'm doing rocket science back here. It is not. I'm more than happy to share the hacks, the workarounds, the tips that real digital marketers use every day, rather than pretend that it's something that you need to pay $10,000 for me to get out of bed for, because I think that's unscrupulous. I don't actually think that's ethical.
Well, I mean, for companies that can afford, it's also a matter of who can afford it, right? For a company with more resources. But if you're talking about small business, the small business owner that does the day-to-day job, and it wears multiple hats, and they just want to have that tangible first step and the next and the next and the next to grow and improve, right? So it's not a matter of paying those 10,000. So what you're doing, actually, it's amazing for them.
Yeah, and I remember myself being a small business owner when I first started out, and I'd come from advertising, which is kin to marketing. It's marketing's cousin, but it's not marketing. I had quite a steep learning curve, and I had to self-educate a lot about 12 or 13 years ago when I did make that switch. And I think, as I said, the real sort of value that I can see is identifying a gap or a pain point or a point which provides stress or confusion, and finding a way that just evaporates that. That doesn't exist at the moment. So that's what I've done. So the bridging that I've noticed, or the gap that I've noticed that I'm trying to eliminate, is the gap between when a small business owner or a startup, they begin their business. There's a sort of ideation phase where they're thinking of the business name. They're getting that logo and visual brand identity nailed. They think of a clever tagline. Once that kind of initial conceptualization of the brand is done, the next natural step is to build a website.
Exactly.
Everybody kind of feels like that. Like that's your, unless you have a physical shop, that's your shop, that's your home. So that all sounds well and good, but if you don't work in marketing and you're not very tech savvy, so a lot of my clients have offline businesses where they're, you know, one is a celebrity facialist, one is a jewelry designer, one is a doula. These are creative people. They're in, you know, they're in professional or creative services, but they're not on a computer daily. Then simply going to a web developer who asks you 50 questions that you don't know the answer to that make you feel really stupid is a horrible experience.
Absolutely.
So it's not,
and it comes
makes
with
you
a
feel
price tag as well, right? So
yeah, it does. It's expensive and it makes you feel stupid. So nobody's winning. So what I've built is hybrid platform. It's tech enabled, and it basically takes you from that moment where you decide to build a website through to the website being built for you. It's called Website in 1 week because we only take 1 week to build the website once the participant has gone through the course. And the course teaches them the basics, like how to save your logo in the right format with no background, how to register your dream domain, how to write an optimized blog. What's the difference between an optimized blog and a blog? So things like that, it teaches them. Basically, they do homework. The homework they submit is what my team use to build their website. So they're getting their website built, they're learning a hell of a lot along the way, and they're actually creating resources that they'll be able to use later. They can use them in their, you know, in their own marketing, in their social media and EDMs later on. So yeah, that's the product.
That's very interesting. So how is going so far? Have you had any trials? Have there been successes? Can you tell us about?
Yeah, I've got 2 beta testers going now and another going next week. It officially launches next week. We've ironed out most of the kinks with those 2 testers. We've, of course, done in-house testing ourselves, but we got real people to test it. No, I think the little funny glitches that we've found are just silly little things where the workflows haven't, you know, the link hasn't connected, that kind of just basic human error that we've been fixing up. But I think the biggest thing that we have to do is, and this is another thing I really got out of the business coaching I did last year, is you don't have to take every customer that comes along. You have to be fussy about your customers. So I think I need to start focusing on reverse marketing, where I quite clearly say, if you don't want to do any work, this is not for you.
Not for you, exactly. Yes.
It's a course, which also results in a website. So if you want to literally hand it over and don't think about it again until you look at your website, this is not right for you. And I think that will be key in getting the message across so that I attract the right people and, you know, sort of gently repel the people that aren't right.
Yeah. Well, I think that all comes down to niching who you want to target and who you want to attract. And for a small business owner, I think that's the perfect product, you know, just to have a kickstart on your own. And it's an easy solution and maybe lower cost than going to a developer for them to build, to have everything built. So I think that's really interesting. We are going to add the links in the description of the video whenever you launch. So please let us know, and then everyone, the audience listening, can have a look at your product. Now, having gone through the challenges, what are the things that you would recommend female entrepreneurs to, you know, overcome these imposter syndrome, the challenges, the mindset? So from your own experience, what would you recommend them?
I think if you can afford it, definitely get a business coach. Or, you know, if that's quite expensive, get enroll yourself in a group program. Don't mind. That's an aeroplane going over. We are very close to Sydney Airport here. That's an aeroplane going over. I'm just pausing to allow it to go. So if you can do a one-on-one coaching, best of all. You can't look for a group coaching program. If you can't do that, get an accountability buddy. So you probably know somebody else, and there's actually quite a lot of networks out there. I belong to a number, mostly in Australia, but some are global, which, you know, you meet fellow business owners through, and you basically want to ask if someone can be your accountability buddy. And each week you set a goal whether that's to write and share a blog on LinkedIn and send it out via your newsletter, or to ring 3 people in your network and ask them for a referral, whatever it might be, you set a task each at the start of, say Friday or Monday, and then the next week you check in and see how it went and set another one. So it's all about intentions and having someone to follow through with you. I would also say don't jump into hiring full-time staff at first or hiring an office at first. Like, be willing to grow slowly, and there's no shame in that. I think there's a bit of an ego thing sometimes that comes into it, where you feel like you need a big glass office with your logo on the door and 3 people who have business cards with your logo on them. And that's not necessarily the best use of your capital, especially if you don't have investment at the start. So consider using subcontractors, freelancers. You can sort of make it look, to all intents and purposes, like they work for you with their own email, with titles and things, but you're only going to be paying them for the work that they're doing. And then finally, pay yourself, but be willing to pay yourself less at times when you have to work less in the business because you're working on the business. So I have a salary that I draw from my business, but at times I reduce that salary because I'm not working in the business. So I'm not doing anything that's immediately revenue generating. I'm working on future projects and strategy. So, where that happens and I don't have the cash flow to cover everything that needs to go out, I don't mind. For that month, I will take a dip in my salary because that's an investment in my future. So that's how I've bootstrapped without, getting external investment, is just being willing to do that from time to time if it's something I really believe will pay dividends, in the short to medium term.
Exactly. So I think those are really good tips in terms of like how to have a strategy, how to pay yourself, and then have an accountability partner if the coaching option is not available. Now, I've heard a lot of stories about business coaches and how to choose one that fits within what your needs are. What are some tips that you'd give in that sense to someone who's looking for external support?
Yeah. I think number one is you have to vibe with them. I mean, that's probably an obvious one. Everyone's probably going, yeah, Lauren, we know that. But you definitely have to vibe with them. You're kind of going to strike a friendly style relationship. But for me, I'm quite a direct person. I'm not shy. I didn't want someone who would just be like, you're doing great, like a cheerleader. I wanted someone who would be like, no. You said you'd have that done by Wednesday. What have you been doing? That would really take me to task. So I kind of had an idea in my mind of who I wanted, and that's who I found. But also stalk them on socials for quite a while first. Like, I've been keeping my eye on the lady that I eventually started to do business coaching with for about 6 or 7 years. I've been following her on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on her EDMs. I really got her vibe through that. So I was like, this is the right person for me. I was just waiting for it to be the right time in my life. I think you've got to match what you're willing to pay, but also don't be stingy, because, the more experienced people do charge more, but you get the value because they've worked with so many businesses before. They've seen everything go around and come around. So that, those are key. But as I said, if it's not affordable, I really feel like you can't get the same result, but you can certainly get an improvement in your output from working with someone in your network in a mutually kind of helpful way.
Exactly. So I think also the fact of having this small improvement over time also brings more benefit as well, in terms of, growing step by step. And then when the moment comes to afford a business coach, then that's the next, logical step in that sense. Okay, well, I think this is, sorry?
It's a slow game. It doesn't look like that on Instagram and TikTok, but don't believe what you see. It is a slow game. Like, I've been at it for a long time, and life gets in the way sometimes. And rather than getting frustrated, I think you have to accept it. There's sort of time to just, to grow, and there's a time to just chill.
Yes. I mean, you have this image of like overnight success. And I think in other podcasts, I've touched upon this topic so much because I love examples like yours. You've been growing it over time. You've brought the business to a stable position where you can continue growing, right? So let's remove the idea of overnight success. This doesn't happen. It takes a long time to build a stable business. And I cannot, have enough of like just highlighting this message again and again and again. So yeah, it requires hard work, but then, it's nice to also see examples like yours that are very successful.
Yes, getting there in the end. Still always work to do.
That's enough. And you also get the benefit from doing it for yourself. You can, as you mentioned before, you can have your own limits, decide how much you want to work, how to find space around your family and your own needs. I think that's also very important. Okay, so now before we wrap up, what are some tips that you'd give female entrepreneurs that are recently starting their business and want to become as successful as you are?
I think from the start, make sure that you allocate time to work on your business each week. I didn't do that. That's a mistake I made. I just always was so busy. I used to make jokes about being the shoemaker with the holes in her shoes when I hadn't sent an email to my database for 2 months. It's actually not really good enough. You actually have to make that time. If for nothing else, it reminds you of why you're in business. You're in business to grow your dream, and you have to invest in your dream. And that investment will be time and it will be money at different stages, but you have to invest what it needs. If you kind of starve it of time and budget and pour all your energy into your customers or your clients or your products, your business will sort of founder eventually. So that's one. 2 is don't think everybody's doing anything. Everybody is not doing any one thing. Everybody is doing it their own way. And there's so many different ways to skin the cat, to use that ridiculous old metaphor. There's not a perfect route that you're missing out on. Everybody's route looks different. I think get to know other small business owners when you're starting out is really helpful. I love networking. I just get right in there and anytime there's a networking event, I'm all about it. I'm mainly trying to get away from my kids, to be honest, but that works. It works for both. It works. But just, meeting other business owners and sharing the struggles and the tips, and don't be afraid to ask. One of the podcasts that I listen to is by it's called Mums & Co, and it's a women in business networking group here in Australia. And every month they do a What's Your Business Ask. And I just love that because everybody just asks. I want 10 more people to come to my event. I want 1 new big sale over 5,000 this month. I want somebody to make my email flow automated. Whatever it is, you'd be amazed at how much people jump in, at least with some advice, sometimes with a connection that they know that can help with that. Sometimes, an offer to do part of it for you kind of comes around and goes around. So don't ever be afraid to ask. Just ask. The worst that can happen is people say no and you feel a little bit stupid, but that doesn't really matter.
No, you have a no already. You have nothing to lose, right? So you may as well try.
Yeah.
Okay, Lauren. Well, thank you very much for this chat. We are going to put all the links in the description to reach out to you, to connect with you on LinkedIn and continue the conversation. Thank you for being here and thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Lovely to chat.